Gearing up for the State of the Union, the White House is planning to ditch any heavy-handed language slamming the GOP on immigration reform. The strategy is to take a kinder, gentler approach on immigration now that Republican leaders may be ready to make a deal. Majority Whip Kevin McCarthy of California, the third-ranking Republican in the House, revealed he will back granting legal status to undocumented immigrants, although not a pathway to citizenship. Karen Finney is the host of MSNBC's Disrupt with Karen Finney and the former head of communications at the DNC. Hector Barreto is the chairman of the Latino coalition. He was head of the Small Business Administration in the George W. Bush White House. Good to see both of you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, Karen, you're the message person here. Is simply dialing back the rhetoric an effective strategy?
Well, I think there's two parts to the strategy, and it may end up being effective. Number one, if behind closed doors the Republicans have said, you got to give us some space, we're going to try to see what we can make happen here, then yes, that is a good strategy. That being said, it also means that if we proceed with that strategy and still nothing gets done, the president can still come out and say, look, I did what you asked, I gave you your space, nothing happened, I'm moving ahead with executive orders, and which is really all he can do at this point.
Hector, we all know the autopsy that the GOP did after the 2012 election had immigration at the top of the list when it comes to mending fences with communities, with voters, obviously. So why hasn't a deal been worked out yet?
Well, I think that they've been working behind the scenes, and obviously they don't want to put something forward if they're not going to have the support for it. This is not a new issue. You know, we've been dealing with this issue for now decades, and I think it's a good sign that they're doing some of this work behind the scenes, and when they're ready, they'll come forward with it. But I think this is too important of an issue just to, you know, for us to demagogue it or put it in just political context. I mean, this is critical to our economy and to the future security of our country. So we need to get something done, even if we're taking small steps. We've got to make some progress forward.
Well, to your point of how long we've been working on this, the New York Times has a story that details, Karen, two women who could play key roles in any deal that gets done. One works for the White House, the other for Speaker Boehner. But I thought the interesting thing about these women is that they worked together on immigration a decade ago. So I wonder, is the timing right now, and could their experience and their friendship be a key ingredient in all this?
It could be, because obviously when you're working with someone that you've worked with before, certainly in politics, trust makes a big difference, and there has not been a lot of trust among many factions in Congress and the White House on some of these issues. But I think the key thing is, unfortunately, the timing. I think the political reality is, the closer we get to the 2014 midterm elections, the harder it will be for Republicans to get anything done, because the reality is they have too many members who are in districts where they don't need to worry about the Latino vote to win. They don't care about the National Party, and that's some of the places where we've seen some of the harshest rhetoric. So right now, while I think that's part of the strategy, keep the rhetoric down, let's tone it down, let's see what's possible. But again, I think the clock is really running as we get closer to the election.
Is she right about that? And is there a middle ground, Hector, about people between people whose main concern is protecting the border and those like you who, I mean, obviously don't disagree with that, but think you really have to look at this as an economic imperative?
I agree with Karen. I think this is going to be a very challenging year. The sooner they can get something done, the better. The longer this goes on, I think it's going to be much more difficult. But look, there's a lot of examples of people that are working together across the aisle. I mean, you've got Luis Gutierrez and Paul Ryan, who've had a lot of conversations and meetings, public meetings on this. You've got people like Marco Rubio, you've got people like Jeb Bush and others who have worked with their counterparts on the other side to get something done. So I don't think it's going to be so unusual to see some bipartisanship here, but the sooner the better.
I think the key issue is going to be convincing the groups, if they end up doing a piecemeal approach, that's really going to be effective, because I think there's a lot of concern among the activist community that is going to mean that's a danger sign for actual progress.
Karen Finney, Hector Barreto, thanks to both of you. And you can watch Disrupt with Karen Finney weekends at 4 p.m. Eastern right here on MSNBC.